Welcome, listeners. Settle in, turn down the lights, and prepare yourselves. Over the decade that I have sat behind a microphone and looked into the lens of a camera, I have often opened these episodes by declaring that the topic of the day is the most disturbing mystery I have ever covered. When you spend your life staring into the deepest, darkest trenches of the internet, the shadows tend to stare back. The web is an endless, unfathomable black hole of human depravity. But today is different. Today's subject genuinely, without a shadow of a doubt, stands as the most psychologically scarring and horrifying reality I have ever encountered. It occupies a tier of terror that the vast majority of humanity will never witness. And frankly, a tier they absolutely never should be. Consider this an urgent, uncompromising disclaimer. This episode is not a treasure map. I am not leaving breadcrumbs for you to follow. The raw, unedited footage at the dark heart of this story is something you must never, ever seek out. It will leave a stain on your mind that you cannot wash away. Even the sanitized, verbal description of these events may be too much for the faint of heart. If you are sensitive to extreme violence, psychological horror, or the darkest extremes of human deviance, I strongly advise you to turn off this podcast right now. If you are still here, then brace yourself. We are going to step into the abyss. The Vietnamese butcher, a nightmare verified. Several months ago, the digital landscape was quietly rocked by an article penned by Bendito for Vice. The headline was a gut punch: a Vietnamese murder has given the world its first real snuff movie. The article methodically detailed the sudden, sickening appearance of 3 video clips on a notorious, now defunct shock site known as Watch People Die. It was late July 2025 when these files surfaced, collectively branded by the dark web as the Vietnamese Butcher Files. The most widely shared of these videos, a clip tentatively, coldly titled The Execution, is a masterclass in primal horror. The framing is terrifyingly simple. It is a top-down shot. The camera looks down upon a man lying flat on his back. Beneath him is a thick plastic top, spread meticulously across the sterile, rigid geometry of a tiled bathroom floor. The man is alive. He is awake. He is actively pleasuring himself. Positioned directly beneath the nape of his neck is a heavy, scarred wooden chopping block. If you listen closely to the audio, beneath the heavy breathing, you can hear the faint, muffled hum of the outside world, the distant barking of stray dogs, the low rumble of passing vehicles. It is a chilling juxtaposition. This nightmare is not unfolding in some isolated, subterranean dungeon. It is happening in the middle of civilization. Just on the other side of those walls, people are living their normal lives, completely oblivious to the slaughter occurring inches away. When the man on the floor breathlessly announces that he is reaching his physical climax, the camera does not flinch. From just off-screen, a second figure steps smoothly into the frame. This figure raises a heavy, rusted meat cleaver high into the air. With several devastating, brutally efficient blows, the executioner severs the man's head from his shoulders. The horror of the scene is captured with clinical, high-definition intimacy. A violent spray of arterial blood paints the tiled walls. The victim's headless torso twitches violently, driven by dying electrical impulses, before finally going agonizingly limp. The executioner does not pause to admire his work. He is all business. Panting heavily, his breath echoing in the small room, he drags the severed head out of the camera's view. He then retrieves a blade and begins to dismantle the victim's body. The precision is terrifying. He makes a long, practiced incision starting from the stump of the neck, dragging the steel straight down to the pubic bone before butterflying the torso open. This was not a frantic crime of passion. The fluid, steady movements suggested an executioner who had done this before. The video spread like a digital virus. The users of Watch People Die were a hardened, cynical demographic, deeply desensitized to cartel executions on tragic accidents. But the execution struck a different nerve entirely. It felt horribly produced. It was perfectly lit. The framing was unavailing intimate. And, as investigators would soon realize, this single horrific act had been captured from multiple angles by several cameras strategically mounted around the killing room. The second video in the collection, grimly labeled The Butchering, picks up immediately where the first left off. It documents the methodical, sickening deconstruction of the human body. Limbs are separated at the joints and arranged with disturbing care. Internal organs are casually washed in a standard kitchen sink. Strips of human flesh are plated unhandled with chopsticks. In the most grotesque sequence, severed pieces of the victim are explicitly inserted into the victim's own detached mouth. But, of the 3 initial clips that leaked that July, the third is undoubtedly the most psychologically complex. It is titled The Rehearsal. This clip takes place in a completely different setting, an office environment. The lighting is fluorescent, the walls lined with mundane cabinets. The victim is alive and well. He is kneeling on the floor, practicing the act of placing his neck onto the wooden chopping block. Standing over him is the executioner. He is dressed in standard Adidas sportswear, his face entirely concealed behind the haunting, frozen grin of a Guy Fawkes mask. The masked man raises his cleaver, pantomiming the downward swing, illustrating exactly how he plans to extinguish the kneeling man's life. Toward the end of the rehearsal, the victim looks up and softly asks for the cameras to be turned off. In a moment of surreal, nauseating tenderness, the masked killer pats him on the shoulder, comforting the man he is about to slaughter. They both stand up, and the recording cuts to black. The implications of the rehearsal were staggering. This was not a kidnapping. This was not a forced execution. The victim was entirely aware of the cameras, entirely aware of his impending doom, and had willfully, voluntarily offered his life to be ended and his body to be consumed. The economics of murder. As morbid curiosity drove internet sleuths deeper into the digital shadows, a horrifying reality came to light. Those 3 leaked videos were merely the promotional material. They were part of a massive, heavily guarded digital dossier containing 11 full-length recordings and 98 high-resolution photographs. This entire morbid package was actively being advertised for sale on Telegram. The encrypted messaging application, famously favored by cartels and black markets, indicates for its impenetrable privacy. If you wanted a taste of the horror, limited access to the pack would cost you roughly $100. If you wanted the full, unexpurgated collection of atrocities, the price tag was $600. Our investigators discovered that this snuff package had been circulating in the deepest, most restricted corners of the black market since February 2025, a full 5 months before the promotional clips bled onto the surface web. While the entire collection has not yet been leaked to the public, the fragments that have surfaced are enough to break the sanity of even the most hardened investigators. In one series of leaked photographs, the victim's heart, kidneys, and other internal organs are proudly displayed cooking in a traditional herbal stew, simmering alongside red dates and goji berries. Other images show human flesh prepared in a rich curry. In another deeply unsettling set of photos, the executioner stands before a bathroom mirror. He is posing, holding the victim's freshly severed head by the hair, snapping a gruesome selfie. Darker rumors persist of a video where the killer actively boils the skull in a large stockpot, though mercifully into the bakeroom of her husband. This footage has not yet been independently verified on the surface web. The internet is no stranger to death. Cartel beheadings, tragic accidents, and horrific suicides have circulated online since the dawn of video sharing. But the Vietnamese butcher was an entirely different beast. Vice definitively labeled the execution segment the first verified snuff video. The true definition of a snuff film has been debated by criminologists for decades. It is not simply a recording of a murder, like the infamous 3 Guys, 1 Hammer video. It is not a compilation of repulsivist gore. To qualify as true snuff, the murder must be premeditated, orchestrated, and filmed for the explicit, primary purpose of commercial distribution. The killing is done to turn a profit, not for sadistic pleasure, not to terrorize a rival gang, for money. For decades, experts insisted that true commercial snuff was an urban legend, but the Vietnamese butcher shattered that comforting illusion. When I first read the Vice article, I filed it away in my mind as a terrifying anomaly, planning to eventually feature it in a compilation of internet horrors. But as the weeks passed, the mainstream English-language media went dead silent. No follow-up articles were published. No arrests were announced. Slowly, the nightmare faded from my immediate attention. Until last week. Enter the digital detectives. I was contacted directly by a dedicated viewer of this podcast, an individual who wishes to remain strictly anonymous. For the sake of this narrative, we will call them X. X urged me to look back into the dark wood of the Vietnamese butcher. There had been a seismic shift in the case, X explained, directing me to a meticulously compiled 106-page digital dossier. This document was the magnum opus of a covert Facebook community known as Ozintin Cyber Investigation Vietnam. Operating entirely in the shadows, utilizing burner accounts and Vun's BS to shield their identities from potential retaliation. This decentralized army of amateur sleuths and digital forensic experts had taken the investigation into their own hands. They had spent months scraping open source intelligence, determined to give the headless victim a name, and to drag the masked executioner out into the light of day. This is the harrowing story of their hunt. The Ozint group began with the basics. They scoured the public internet for any whispers of the crime. The results were chillingly bare. Despite the victim's face being fully visible in several frames of the footage, not a single family member, friend, or colleague had stepped forward to claim him. Furthermore, there was absolute radio silence from the Vietnamese authorities. No press releases, no missing persons reports. But the Ozint investigators were not operating blind. The psychological profile of the crime gave them a very specific place to start. In the modern history of true crime, cases of fully consensual cannibalistic homicide are incredibly rare. The two most infamous precedents both originated in Germany: the horrifying saga of Armin Maiweis, who consumed the willing volunteer burnt brands, and the case of Detlef Gunzel, a police officer who butchered a Polish businessman named Wojciech Stensbowicz. In both of these historical nightmares, the predators and their willing prey had found one another in the deepest, most depraved corners of the internet, on dedicated cannibalism forums, like the Cannibal Cafe in Zambian Meat. The Ozint sleuths hypothesized that the Vietnamese butcher and his victim must have connected in a similar digital underworld. Analyzing the audio of the clips, linguistic experts confirmed that both the victim and the masked killer spoke with authentic, native Vietnamese accents. The title of the snuff film was accurate. Armed with this profile, the investigators plunged into the darkest recesses of the Vietnamese internet, infiltrating encrypted chat rooms and underground forums dedicated to the fetishization of extreme violence, decapitation, and the consumption of long pork, a vile slang term for human meat. It did not take them long to strike gold. They identified the victim. His name was Nguyen Xuan Dat. He was 36 years old. In the physical world, that was a ghost. He lived an intensely isolated, painfully private existence. He worked a grueling, blue-collar job as a fishmonger at the bustling Funke home market in Hanoi Noya. He had no close friends. He had no romantic partners. But, in the digital realm, that was a prolific, highly visible figure. Since at least 2019, that had been an obsessively active user on Motherless, an explicit, unregulated file-sharing platform accessible only via VPN, known for hosting the most extreme and illegal deviant content on the web. Across Motherless and various other dark web forums, he operated under variations of a highly disturbing handle: that beheading. His digital footprint was a sprawling, tragic manifesto of self-destruction that was entirely fixated on the concepts of decapitation and cannibalism. But unlike typical predators, his desires were entirely masochistic. He did not want to hurt others. He wanted to be destroyed. In one deeply unsettling leaked message, recovered by the Ozint team, that laid out the crushing depression that fueled his fatal fetish, he wrote, "Not only am I ugly, but I'm also full of diseases. I can't afford to live freely like normal folks. I've depended on my parents my whole life. What else could I do? I truly am a prisoner of my own fate, consumed by self-loathing under profound sense of alienation that had actively chosen to withdraw from human society." He dedicated the entirety of his remaining existence to manifesting his darkest, ultimate fantasy. He posted endlessly about his final fantasy. He dreamed of being slaughtered at the absolute peak of sexual ecstasy, ideally by a female executioner, and having his flesh consumed afterward. In the twisted echo chambers he frequented, this desire was encouraged. The Ozint team discovered that on a forum dedicated to extreme Japanese manga, that had personally commissioned the translation of a grotesque Goro story titled Duplicant for Death. The comic depicted a man who, while in the throes of passion with two women, is suddenly decapitated with a katana. The narrative is told from the perspective of the severed head, describing the ultimate, transcendent euphoria of the moment. For the investigators, reading through its post-history was a sobering experience. The manga was not just a piece of shocking fiction to it. It was an instructional manual. It was a blueprint for the end of his life. For years, Dat rigorously scoured the internet, desperately searching for someone willing to cross the ultimate line. He amassed a small, virtual cabal of associates who shared his severe psychological abnormalities. But finding a female executioner proved impossible. Eventually, Dat's desperation forced him to compromise. The Unsolved team managed to track down a profile belonging to Dat on an underground gay forum. In a moment of carelessness, Dat had publicly posted his actual mobile phone number. Digital forensics quickly linked that number to a Zolo account, a popular Vietnamese messaging app. The Zolo profile listed its real date of birth, March 10, 1989. Cross-referencing these vital details with national public records, the sleuths located a man matching Dat's name and birth date in the civil registry of a small village in Tai Binh province. Pushing that lock to investigators called the village head directly. The local official confirmed their suspicions. Yes, a man named Nguyen Xuan that had lived there. He had left the village years ago, shortly after the death of his father. Dat's only living relative was his elderly mother. She reportedly suffered from severe mental health issues and had lost all contact with her son years prior. This tragic isolation perfectly explained why no one had filed a missing persons report, and why no one had recognized his face when his brutalized body was broadcast to the darkest corners of the web. The digital breadcrumbs. With the victim definitively identified, the Unsolved community shifted its crosshair to the masked phantom, who was the executioner. Investigators began reaching out to the few digital contacts listed on its hidden Facebook profile, hoping someone would talk. Eventually, a user operating under the alias Felipe responded. Felipe was deeply entrenched in the same morbid decapitation fantasy community. Felipe confirmed that he had briefly met Dat in the real world at the Hanoi fish market. But Felipe delivered a piece of intelligence that cracked the case wide open. Felipe knew the killer. He was a man they had all interacted with extensively on various extreme forums. A man known simply by the moniker Chung. According to Felipe and other anonymous informants, Dat had been communicating with Chung for a very long time. Dat had grown deeply frustrated with the man, constantly complaining that Chung was stalling, refusing to commit to a firmed Aten location for the execution. But eventually, Chung capitulated. Felipe provided a chilling screenshot to the Unsolved team, a digital contract of sorts, where Chung explicitly agreed to end its life at a specific time and place. The investigation then uncovered a horrifying detail. Shortly after the presumed date of the murder, Dat's personal account had sent a private message to one of his contacts. The message was cold, brief, and typed in the third person. Dat has been beheaded. The implications were terrifying. Chung had not merely killed Dat. He had stolen his digital identity. The executioner had complete access to his victim's social media accounts and was actively impersonating him, maintaining contact with Dat's inner circle of death enthusiasts. Was he doing this to cover his tracks? Or, far more sinister, was he using Dat's profile as bait, casting a line into the dark waters to fish for his next willing victim? Searching for confirmation of Chung's identity, investigators hit a buzz or roadblock. Another user in a dark web group called Likes Beheading, operating under the name HOHU, suddenly stepped forward and boldly confessed to being the killer in the videos. His confession was incredibly brief. Immediately afterward, HOHU vanished, ceasing all communication. The Unsolved team discovered archived chat logs where HOHU openly offered his murder services to other users, including Dat. The investigators were left grappling with three terrifying possibilities. 1. HOHU was a delusional role player seeking sick internet clout. 2. HOHU was simply another burner, alias utilized by the real killer, Chung. Or 3. HOHU was another one of Chung's victims, a man already dead, whose account the executioner had hijacked to continue his digital hunting. Despite the confusion, the Unsolved community managed to construct a highly credible, chilling timeline of Nguyen Xuan at its final days. January 25, 2025, on his private Facebook page that posts a final, ominous status update. It simply reads, 3 hours left until the execution. On that exact day, all of Dat's various firm accounts record their final login activity. This is the day the Vietnamese butcher videos were filmed. This is the day that died. February 25, 2025, exactly 1 month later. The private message reading that has been beheaded is sent from Dat's account. This is also the month the snuff package officially goes up for sale on the Telegram black market. June 10, 2025. Dat's hijacked Facebook account posts a final, eerie update. From today, I'm logging off from this account for good. In July, when the promotional clips hit Watch People Die and the internet begins frantically searching for the victim, Dat's Facebook page experiences a massive surge in traffic. Suddenly, the account is manually deleted from the inside. The killer was watching. He was managing the fallout in real time. They had the victim. They had the timeline. But the face behind the Guy Fawkes mask remained an absolute mystery. Some naive voices on the forums argued that the killer shouldn't be hunted. They claimed that because Dat gave his enthusiastic consent, no real crime had been committed. But this is a dangerous, legally bankrupt fallacy. Outside of highly regulated, medically sanctioned euthanasia protocols, consent does not negate homicide. The man in the mask was a cold-blooded murderer, and a predator who has tasted blood, who has learned how to monetize human slaughter, does not simply stop at one. It was an absolute imperative that this man be unmasked before another vulnerable soul offered their neck to his cleaver. The Ozen team aggressively analyzed the visual evidence. In the selfie photograph where Chung poses in the mirror holding that severed head, crucial physical details slipped past his operational security. Chung possessed a stocky, heavy-set build. His hairline was severely receding, practically balding. He had a distinct, jagged scar resting just above one of his monolid eyes. But the most damning pieces of evidence were inked into his skin. Chung had a highly unique, sprawling birthmark pattern covering his right bicep and extending into his armpit. Furthermore, he possessed a distinct tattoo that read, "That day 13-9. The digital detectives then performed a forensic autopsy of the killer's environment. In the butchering video, the camera tracks Chung as he moves through a small, incredibly specific kitchen space. The floor is lined with blue and white pattern tiles. The baseboards are a stark red. There is a faded green wooden door, striking red wall tiles surrounding the sink, and a cheap white countertop. Investigators zoomed in on the background clutter. A bottle of Love brand water sat on a table. Near the bloody sink rested a yellow bottle of a specific Chinese brand dishwashing liquid. Local experts in the Ozent group immediately recognized the aesthetic, the interior decor, the specific brand of cheap utensils, and the imported Chinese cleaning products were all highly characteristic of buildings located in Vietnam's northern border provinces. They had narrowed the search from a country of 100 million people down to a specific geographical region. But then, the trail went dead. By late August, the investigation stalled out. Months bled by without a single new lead. The Vietnamese butcher seemed destined to become just another terrifying, unsolved internet ghost story. The whistleblower. Then, in the third week of November 2025, the digital silence was shattered. An anonymous Facebook user, whom the community dubbed the whistleblower, or WB, stepped forward with explosive, first-hand evidence. WB had been in direct, intimate contact with both the victim Dat and the executioner, Chung. WB released fresh, unedited screenshots of their final conversation with Dat, dated January 25, 2025. At exactly 2:40 p.m. that message DWB, stating that his execution would commence in approximately 3 hours. This definitively locked the time of death between 5:30 and 6:00 p.m. More terrifyingly, that revealed that he had shared WB's contact information with the executioner. WB admitted that, at one point, they too had harbored suicidal, masochistic fantasies and had actively considered offering themselves up to the butcher. But sanity had prevailed. WB had backed away from the abyss. Now, horrified by the reality of the videos, they wanted the killer brought to justice. WB unleashed their chat history with the executioner. The killer's Facebook profile was named Cam Then Chung. In these deeply disturbing transcripts, Chung callously bragged about the murder, texting WB, "That's bones have already become fertilizer." Then, Chung made a fatal error. Feeling arrogant and secure in his anonymity, he invited the whistleblower to meet in person to discuss WB's own potential beheading. He provided a specific physical address for the rendezvous, a nondescript street in Hoi Long Town, located in the Langsan province, right on the Chinese border. The digital pin dropped suspiciously close to a government tax department building. For the first time in 10 months, the hunters had a full name and a geographical location. At this critical juncture, a prominent Vietnamese true crime YouTuber known as the Curious One Khe Mo entered the fray. He had been covering the case for months, creating detailed 3D architectural reconstructions of the murder room. Armed with the new coordinates in Langsan, he began aggressively cross-referencing the OSINT data with public social media profiles in the region. Within days, the Curious One posted a triumphant, yet terrifying update. He claimed to have definitively identified the killer. But before he could publish the man's real name, the YouTuber went dark. He released a highly agitated statement claiming he had received severe, credible death threats. He wrote, "The forces behind this are too powerful enough to swallow our entire team, so the investigation will end here." He established a dead man's switch, promising that if he was harmed, all the unredacted files would automatically leak to the press. He didn't release the full name, but he left a breadcrumb. He posted a partially blurred screenshot of the killer's username. It took the OSINT community less than an hour to unblur the text. The handle was then Chung 11,111. The dam broke. The web of digital connections rapidly untangled. The handle then Chung with 5 consecutive ones appeared across the internet, on anonymous sex forums, on Instagram, on TikTok. Crucially, the investigators linked these accounts to a Twitter profile, Dawn Sun GLS. That Twitter account was directly bound to a public, highly visible Facebook profile. The profile belonged to a man named Don Van Sang, the monster in the bureaucracy. Don Van Sang was not a shadowy cartel enforcer or a marginalized street criminal. He was a seemingly ordinary, respectable man in his late 50s. He was married. He was a father of 2. He lived a comfortable, upper-middle-class life in Langsan. Most shockingly, Sang was a retired government official. He had served as the deputy head of a team within the Regional Market Management Department, a powerful bureaucratic agency. He was also a prominent, respected figurehead within the massive Dong family clan, commanding deep ties to local government officials through his own career, his wife, and his adult sons. Could this grandfatherly bureaucrat truly be the sadistic butcher the internet was hunting? The OSINT team tore into Sang's life, and the evidence they unearthed was a cascade of horrifying confirmations. Sang's eldest son was named Then Chung. The killer had literally been using his own child's name as his digital murder alias. Furthermore, Then Chung's birth date was September 13th. 13-9. The exact numbers tattooed on the killer's body. Investigators found family photographs where the son, Then Chung, was wearing the exact same Adidas sportswear seen on the masked executioner in the rehearsal video. Given Sang's receding hairline and stocky build, it became obvious that the older man had simply borrowed his son's clothes to commit the atrocity. It must be noted that there is zero evidence suggesting the son had any knowledge or involvement in his father's dark double life. The community dug up an old, abandoned Facebook account Sang had forgotten to scrub. They placed his vacation photos side by side with the leaked images of the butcher. The match was undeniable. Sang possessed a distinct, circular birthmark on his shin, perfectly matching the one on the executioner's leg. The massive, sprawling birthmark on his right bicep and armpit was identical. The facial scars aligned. The receding hairline was a perfect match. In one mundane photograph, taken outside Sang's family home, investigators spotted a pair of cheap, distinctive flip-flops resting by the door. They were the exact same sandals worn by the killer as he stood over its bleeding torso. Then came the final, most sickening realization: the location. OSINT sleuths found a TikTok video Sang had filmed while at work inside the Market Management Department building, specifically Team Number 3's office. The background of the government office was a carbon copy of the room seen in the rehearsal video. The same fake plastic plants, the same bloof and blades, the exact same misaligned filing cabinets. They dug up an old local news article featuring a photograph of Sang inspecting confiscated goods at the department's team number for location. Behind Sang in the photograph was a small employee kitchen. It had the green door, the red tile trim, the blue and white patterned floor tiles, the white countertop. It was the exact room where Nu Yanjuan that had been butchered like an animal. Why would a senior government official commit a capital offense inside a state-owned building? The logic is chillingly sound. The date of the execution, January 25th, marked the beginning of the Tet holiday, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year. The entire country shuts down. Government offices are completely deserted. Sang had specifically volunteered to cover the office alone during the 5-day holiday break. He had total privacy. The office had a large tile bathroom for the execution, a kitchen for the butchering, and, most terrifyingly, an industrial incinerator on site, typically used by the department to destroy confiscated counterfeit goods. It was the perfect, state-funded slaughterhouse. The fall of Don Van Sang. As the digital neck closed tightly around his neck, Sang's behavior became erratic and unhinged. For months, he had been hiding in plain sight. Using burner accounts, Sang had actively joined the Ozent Facebook group. He had been quietly reading the threads, monitoring the progress of the people hunting him. He even had the sheer audacity to leave laughing emoji reactions on posts where users expressed frustration over dead ends. He was drunk on the power of his own perceived brilliance. But when his real name and face were finally published to the group, the panic set in. Sang abandoned his silent voyeurism and began posting manic, aggressive rants directly to the community's timeline. "I am the executioner," he taunted wildly. "Who can catch me? Let me tell you straight. You are the real executioners because you want people to die so that you can celebrate. Isn't that right? I've lived 60 years in this world. I'm no longer afraid of death. Anyone who wants to meet me is invited to my house. Who exposed me? Show yourself." It was the terrifying, desperate flailing of a narcissist realizing that his mask had been permanently ripped away. Digital forensics hammered the final nails into his coffin. Tech-savvy users initiated password resets on the binary mail addresses associated with the Vietnamese butcher accounts. The two-factor authentication prompt pinged directly to an Oppo Reno 12 5G smartphone. When they tested the email linked to Sang's official, public phone number, it pinged the exact same Oppo device. The psychological profile of Don Van Sang that emerged from 2 decades of forum posts was the stuff of nightmares. He had started out on early internet message boards seeking casual, discreet gay encounters, but over the years, his desires mutated into a ravenous need to dominate, humiliate, and ultimately destroy. By 2022, Sang was uploading images of dismembered bodies to shock forums, bragging that he wanted to toughen up the other users. Leaked screenshots showed the government official actively trying to purchase amputated male anatomy from black market surgical suppliers in southern Vietnam. The Ozent community had done the impossible. They had built an airtight, undeniably damning case against a powerful, protected man. They compiled their evidence into a 106-page PDF, translated it into English to ensure global visibility, and released it to the world. The document went viral. The public outcry was deafening. The authorities could no longer look the other way. On November 28, 2025, the Lang Son police quietly moved in. Don Van Sang was arrested. The Market Management Department's team number for office was cordoned off as a major crime scene. Forensic teams descended on the building. According to leaked police reports, the sterile environment of the government building held dark secrets. Deep beneath the kitchen sink, investigators recovered 3 human teeth. When they cracked open the building's septic tank and dredged the drainage cavities behind the kitchen, they pulled up numerous fragments of human bone. A raid on Sang's lavish family home yielded the final pieces of the puzzle. Police seized the Adidas jacket seen in the videos. They recovered a distinct space heater visible in the execution footage. Most damning of all, they found a mobile phone belonging to the victim, Nguyen Xuan that Sang had casually gifted the murdered man's phone to his own elderly sister. Faced with an overwhelming mountain of physical and digital evidence, Don Van Sang broke. He delivered a cold, calculated confession. He admitted to meeting that online in 2020. He claimed that obsessively begged him to perform the execution, eventually offering 10 million Vietnamese dong, roughly $380, to facilitate the killing. Sang claimed he finally agreed in July 2024. On the evening of January 25th, under the cover of the Lunar New Year, Sang lured that into the empty government building. According to Sang, that brought his own meat cleavers. As the sun set, Sang severed the man's head. His confession detailed the horrifying aftermath. Sang admitted to butchering the body, boiling the flesh and organs in the office kitchen to mask the stench of decomposition. He smashed the bones with a hammer, packing the horrific stew into 10 large plastic garbage bags. Some of the meat, he coldly admitted, was fed to local stray dogs. The rest was scattered across public trash bins throughout the city. The murder weapons were unceremoniously dumped in a street sweeper's cart the following day. In his confession, Sang attempted to paint himself as a reluctant participant, a man manipulated by a suicidal victim. But the OSINT investigators knew the truth. They knew about his decades of sadistic forum posts. They knew he had actively tried to lure the whistleblower to the same slaughterhouse just 2 weeks after killing it. Don Van Sang was not a victim. He is an apex predator. Thanks to the relentless dedication of thousands of anonymous digital citizens, he will stand trial for his atrocities. In Vietnam, the penalty for such a crime is death. The unseen abyss. But as we close this incredibly dark chapter, a terrifying question remains hanging in the air. Is this truly the end of the story? We know now that Sang filmed the murder primarily to satisfy his own monstrous urges. But who was selling the footage? The Vietnamese butcher files were distributed on encrypted networks by unknown, Chinese-speaking individuals. We do not know if Sang sold the footage himself, if he shared it with dark web accomplices, or if he was part of a much larger, highly organized black market. There is a growing, sickening theory among cyber investigators that Sang was not a lone wolf. They fear he was a supplier for a sprawling, pan-Asian network of snuff traders. Similar horrors have already begun to bleed onto Chinese platforms like Baidu Taibei. Anonymous brokers are actively advertising horrific footage. As uncovered in the original Vice investigation, one of these brokers posted a price list that will haunt my dreams. Price is $80 to join the regular group, $198 to join the large group. It's a stable group that's been around for 5 years, tens of thousands of users dumping corpses, body dismembering executions. Necrophilia is in the Unsolved group. If you just want pure, clean bodies, that's called forensics. This is the true, lingering horror of the Vietnamese butcher. Don Van Sang's masterpiece of death may just be a single, jagged puzzle piece in a massive mosaic of human suffering. There are entire shadow economies built on the blood of the desperate and the vulnerable. People who kill because they are asked to. People who kill because they know they can get away with it. This case has rocked Vietnam to its very foundations. And while the official channels remain tight-lipped, the only weapon we have against the dark is to keep the light shining on it. We must remember the name Nguyen Duan Dat, and we must ensure the story is not buried beneath tomorrow's headlines. I implore you, once again, do not seek out these videos. They are a poison to the human soul. All credit for this monumental investigation belongs to the brilliant, fearless men and women of the OSINT Facebook community and the tireless work of YouTuber The Curious One. I want to personally thank my anonymous viewer, X, for guiding me through this nightmare, and to all my patrons and supporters, Holly Lyons, Gina Valera, Cole in Mon SMA, Conolo Than Hamish, Alana Pons, Azrael War Raga I, Peter Logdridge, TNS Mung, Ijamina, George Lopez, Farewell Tattoos, Jacksonville Yoke, Terry Ford, Misty Blue, Long White Adel Stein, Truth S. John Stuart Miller, Blaze 420, and Hamish K. Thank you for giving me the strength to look into the abyss and report back to you. Stay safe, watch out for each other, and I will see you all again very soon. There is a terrifying fragility to the human experience. We walk through our daily routines wrapped in a comforting illusion of security. We believe that our lives have intrinsic value. We believe that our homes are our impenetrable sanctuaries. We believe that the people we share our beds with are fundamentally safe. But what happens when that illusion shatters? What happens when you realize just how incredibly cheap a human life can be in the eyes of a predator? Today, we are going to explore 3 distinct, deeply unsettling stories. They span across continents, cultures, and the darkest corners of the digital world. They are united by a single, chilling thread, the absolute violation of the human sanctuary. Take a deep breath, knock your doors, and listen closely. Our first descent takes us into the sprawling, sun-baked, and chaotic streets of Lima, Peru. The date was February 21st, 2022. The heavy, humid air of the South American summer hung thick over the city, mixed with the choking scent of exhaust fumes and the endless cacophony of blaring car horns. Navigating through this relentless concrete maze was a man named Leonardo Colipi. Leonardo was a Venezuelan immigrant. He was a father to 3 children, a man who bore the crushing weight of providing for a family in a foreign land. His lifeline was his motorcycle. He worked the grueling, dangerous hours of a moto taxi driver, weaving through gridlocked traffic, hunting for customers, transporting strangers across the sprawling metropolis just to scrape together enough souls to put food on the table. It was a life of profound exhaustion. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the smoggy sky in bruised shades of purple and orange, the clock struck 6. Zaropian. Leonardo was tired. He pulled his motorcycle over and parked on Calle Los Paris, a bustling thoroughfare in the district of Los Olivos. A group of fellow taxi drivers had congregated on the side of the road, leaning against their vehicles, sharing cigarettes and killing time between fares. Leonardo joined them, but the atmosphere was not one of camaraderie. According to witnesses standing nearby, the air quickly grew thick with tension. A heated, aggressive argument erupted between the exhausted father of 3 and another man in the group. Voices were raised. Chests were buffed out. The chaotic ambient noise of Calle Los Paris seemed to fade into the background as the dispute escalated into something visceral and dangerous. After several tense minutes of verbal sparring, something inside Leonardo seemed to break. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't yell back. Instead, a wave of profound, crushing distress washed over his face. He looked utterly defeated. He turned his back on the man, walked heavily over to the concrete curb, and sat down. He stared at the pavement, perhaps contemplating the sheer exhaustion of his existence. The man he had been arguing with did not walk away. He followed Leonardo. But he didn't raise his fists. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his smartphone. He tapped the screen, opening the camera application, and hit record. What happens next is forever immortalized in a piece of digital footage that would soon traumatize the internet. In the video, the camera points down at Leonardo. The father sits on the dirty pavement, looking up into the lens. His eyes are hollow, completely drained of fight. He looks at the man holding the phone, and with a voice heavy with solemn resignation, he utters a single, cryptic phrase. Dile el patron. Tell the boss. From behind the lens, the cameraman's voice sneers back, dripping with cold, mocking disbelief. El patron. He repeats, his tone suggesting, oh really? Is that right? Then the cameraman's free hand enters the frame. He isn't holding a second phone. He is gripping the cold, black steel of a 9-Glock pistol. He points the muzzle directly at the seated father. Without a millimeter of hesitation, without a single flinch, the man pulls the trigger. Glunk, glunk, glunk. 3 deafening explosions rip through the evening air. The 9 rounds tear directly into Leonardo's left temple. The hysterostotic shock of the bullets ripping through his skull is so catastrophically violent that Leonardo's left eye is completely dislodged from its socket. The executioner doesn't stop. Glunk, glunk. A 4th and 5th round are discharged with mechanical precision, slamming into Leonardo's nose and cheek. In a fraction of a second, the father's face is obliterated, reduced to a mask of crimson. His lifeless body slumps over, collapsing heavily onto the unforgiving concrete of the sidewalk. The gunfire stops, but the horror does not. The killer does not immediately run. He stands there, his breathing completely steady, and lingers. He keeps the smartphone camera pointed squarely at Leonardo's ruined face, documenting the carnage. In the final, agonizing seconds of the recording, a sickening, wet gurgling sound echoes from the pavement, the sound of air escaping a shattered respiratory system. In the background, the terrified, piercing shout of a bystander finally shatters the silence. But what is perhaps most disturbing about the immediate aftermath is not just the killer's cold-blooded documentation. As the executioner finally turns and vanishes into the labyrinth of Lima, the onlookers, the people who had just witnessed a man butchered in broad daylight, do not rush forward to apply pressure to his wounds. They do not hold his hand. They pull out their own phones. A crowd inches closer to the bleeding corpse of the father, holding their glowing screens aloft, snapping photographs and recording their own videos of the gore, reducing the end of a human life to a morbid digital spectacle. Who was the man holding the Glock? The police quickly identified the executioner. He was not a disgruntled taxi driver. He was a known, deeply feared cartel extortionist and professional sicario, a hitman named Frank Lopez. In the criminal underworld, Frank operated under a terrifying alias, Moto por gusto. Kill for pleasure. The motive behind this savage, public execution defies all logic. It wasn't over a rival cartel territory. It wasn't a crime of passion. Leonardo Coley P. was butchered in the street, his children left fatherless, over a debt of exactly 60 Peruvian sols in unpaid toll fees. 60 sols, roughly $16.50 in American currency. That was the absolute, calculated value Frank Lopez placed on a human life. Frank did not film the murder for his own sick entertainment. He filmed it as a marketing tool. Later that very same evening, while Leonardo's family was likely receiving the most devastating news of their lives, Frank was busy sending the snuff film directly to the cell phones of other taxi drivers operating in the Los Olivos district. He attached a simple, terrifying message: pay your debts, or this could happen to you. But the internet is a hungry, uncontrollable beast. The footage did not stay contained to the phones of frightened taxi drivers. It leaked. It metastasized. Within days, the horrifying execution video flooded the darkest corners of the web, uploaded to notorious shock sites under titles like El Patron and One Man. 5 bullets. It spread like a digital virus across Spanish-speaking countries. Most sickeningly of all, the clip infiltrated the mobile phones of elementary and high school children, who began airdropping and texting the snuff film to one another as a morbid, traumatizing prank, a grotesque, blood-soaked version of a Rickroll. The police manhunt was intense, and 1 month later, the authorities kicked down a door and dragged Frank Lopez away in handcuffs. He stood trial, and the gavel came down. The judge sentenced the hitman to 17 years and 4 months in a Peruvian penitentiary. If you are thinking that 17 years is an indulgently light sentence for a premeditated, recorded public execution, your blood is right to boil. But the true outrage, the absolute failure of the justice system, runs much deeper. Frank Lopez should never have been standing on Calle Los Paris that evening. 3 years prior, in 2019, Frank had been hunted down and arrested by police for the brutal slaughter of 2 other human beings. During that investigation, detectives found compelling evidence linking him to the unsolved murders of 8 more people. He was a serial butcher. He was caught. But the system blinked. Due to a microscopic clerical error, a maddening technicality botched by the presiding judge, the case fell apart. The system unlocked the cage and released a monster back onto the streets. If the scales of justice had been properly balanced in 2019, Leonardo Coley P. would have driven home to his 3 children on the night of February 21st, and one of the most viscerally horrific POV snuff films in internet history would never have been created. But the torment of the Coley P. family did not end when the blood was washed from the sidewalk. 9 months later, in November of 2022, the digital ghost of Leonardo was resurrected in the most twisted way imaginable. Roughly 187 people, journalists, strangers, and those loosely connected to the case, opened their email inboxes to find a new message. The subject line consisted of a single, unassuming word. When they clicked the email, the main body of text read, "My name is Leonardo Alexander Corright Brito and this is what I look like on video." Attached to the email was a video file titled California MP4. It was specifically formatted so that it could not be previewed. The recipient was forced to download the file directly to their hard drive to see its contents. Those who hit download and open the file were subjected to an absolute nightmare. The screen flickered to life, displaying a highly sophisticated, AI-generated deepfake. It was the face of Leonardo Corright. But it was not his face from life. The creator had taken the sickening, blood-soaked, disfigured image of his face from the execution video, mapped it onto a digital skeleton, and animated it. The mutilated face of the murdered father was forced to lip-sync and smile along to the upbeat pop song California Girls by Katy Perry. It was an act of unfathomable cyber-necromancy, a profound, malicious desecration of the dead. If a horrified recipient attempted to reply to the email, begging the sender to stop, an automated script triggered instantly, firing back any mail containing a high-resolution, static screenshot of the grotesque deepfake fake. The digital manhunt began. Tech-savvy recipients, disgusted by the psychological terrorism, traced the IP address of the Gmail account. They do exec said the creator, exposing the phone numbers, email addresses, and physical location of a man named Jacob. But the rabbit hole went deeper. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Jacob was not the digital butcher who coded the deepfake. He was simply a mercenary. He had been hired by an anonymous third party, paid a fee to act as a proxy and distribute the horrifying emails on someone else's behalf. Before the campaign was shut down, a second wave of emails hit the web. This variation, also titled Hello, carried an even darker message. "My name is Leonardo. I exist." Attached was a file named Leonardo. This was not an AI manipulation. It was a raw, digitally enhanced, zoomed-in cut of the original execution footage, forcing the viewer to stare intimately at the father's ruined corpse. To this day, the true identity of the puppeteer who orchestrated the deepfake campaign remains unknown. They are out there, sitting behind a keyboard, finding amusement in the eternal torment of a murdered man. This brings us to our second story. We move away from the violent physical streets and descend into the quiet, creeping paranoia of the digital landscape. Buried deep beneath the algorithm, hidden in the darkest, most obscure corners of YouTube, exists a channel that you have likely never heard of. It has no flashy banners. It has no introductory trailer. It features absolutely no biographical information. The channel is named Dale Torres. The only identifying marker is an eerie, unsettling profile picture, a shadowy, anonymous figure that perfectly encapsulates the deeply disturbing nature of the content hosted there. If you were to click onto this channel, you would be greeted by a staggering archive. 753 videos. When you click on the first thumbnail, you might be confused. The footage appears incredibly mundane. It is usually filmed from a single, elevated vantage point, the glass pane of an apartment window, looking out over the concrete geometry of a neighboring residential building. At first glance, it is boring. It is quiet. It is the ordinary texture of city life. But, as the seconds tick by, the context shifts. A cold, sinking feeling begins to pool in your stomach. It starts to feel wrong. Every single piece of media on this channel is an act of extreme, calculated voyeurism. The cameraman, Dale Torres, does not point his lens at the sky, or the architecture, or the street traffic. He fixes his camera directly on the lit, glowing windows of the apartments across the street. He zooms in on the people walking on the pavement far below. He is hunting for vulnerability. And he is patient. The cameraman does not just fixate on a single unlucky neighbor. He rotates his gaze. He cycles between multiple different apartments, across multiple different floors. He observes them with such frequency that it becomes terrifyingly clear. He knows their schedules. He knows when they come home. He knows when they leave. Through his high-powered lens, he captures human beings in their most fiercely guarded, private moments. He films a woman mindlessly folding her laundry in her living room. He captures people undressing, changing their clothes in what they believe is the absolute sanctuary of their own bedrooms. He records a solitary figure sitting in the blue glow of a television screen. He watches people obsessively dancing to unheard music. And darker still, he films their pain. He captures heated, venomous arguments between couples who think no one can hear them. He zooms in on individuals weeping in total isolation, their faces buried in their hands. These are moments that no human being would ever knowingly permit a stranger to witness. The channel is not confined entirely to the apartment window. Sometimes the silent watcher takes his camera out into the world. He records unsuspecting targets at sun-drenched beaches, sitting isolated on park benches, or waiting silently at desolate bus stops. The structure of the videos adds to the psychological terror. There is no editing. There are no jump cuts to keep the viewer engaged. There is no added suspenseful music or voiceover narration. There is only the raw, unpolished audio of reality, the low, distant hum of city traffic, the muffled echo of far-off conversations, the ambient noise of a world unaware it is being stalked. Some videos are fleeting, lasting only 5 or 10 seconds. Others are agonizingly long, stretching past the 20-minute mark as the unblinking, sociopathic gaze of El Torres simply absorbs the intimate lives of his targets, stealing their privacy to feed his own dark amusement. But what elevates this channel from creepy to truly disturbing is not just the content, it is the audience. The El Torres channel is not a viral sensation. It operates in the shadows. Most of the 753 videos barely scrape past 100 views, but there is a dedicated, silent congregation that tunes in. If you scroll down to the comment sections, those sparse, echoing spaces beneath the videos, you will find them. They do not express disgust. They leave cryptic, encouraging remarks. They leave approving emoji. It is a hidden parasitic community of digital voyeurs, feeding off the stolen fragments of other people's lives. Even more alarmingly, investigators who have plunged into the depths of this channel have uncovered comments from users explicitly asking El Torres when his next live stream will be. This deeply implies that the YouTube channel is merely a free advertisement, a holding pen. It suggests that Torres streams this non-consensual surveillance live in real time on deeper, darker platforms, potentially profiting from the digital stalking of his neighbors. Digital sleuths have attempted to pin down the location of this phantom cameraman. The very first video uploaded to the archive contains environmental clues pointing toward the sweltering, palm-lined streets of Miami, Florida. However, forensic analysis of the license plates visible in dozens of subsequent videos strongly indicates that he currently operates out of Chile. Whether he is a transient ghost moving from city to city, or simply a man who brought his terrifying hobby back home, his unblinking eye remains open. Somewhere right now, a person is standing in their kitchen, believing they are entirely alone, unaware that they are the star of a silent film, being broadcast to a gallery of unseen predators. For our final descent, we cross the Pacific Ocean, stepping into the rigid, highly structured, and deeply complex societal framework of Japan. To understand the sheer psychological horror of this final story, you must first understand the invisible walls that surround Japanese domestic life. In this deeply conservative society, the concept of marriage is often treated as an unbreakable contract. Divorce does not merely come with mountains of legal paperwork and bureaucratic headaches. It carries a suffocating, heavy social stigma. It is a mark of profound failure, a stain that can ostracize a person from their community. This burden falls disproportionately on the shoulders of women. Despite modernization, traditional gender roles remain deeply entrenched. Many Japanese women are heavily pressured, or explicitly expected, to abandon their careers and personal ambitions the moment they say "I do." They are expected to transition into the role of full-time housewives, managing the home and raising the children. The dark consequence of this dynamic is absolute financial dependency. When a marriage turns cold, when the love rots away, or worse, when it becomes abusive, these women find themselves trapped. They have no independent income. They have a massive gap in their resumes. An unhappy marriage in the land of the rising sun can rapidly mutate from a partnership into a psychological prison, a form of inescapable indentured servitude. It is within this suffocating pressure cooker of resentment that a terrifying digital sanctuary was born. Welcome to Danashinai. Translated into English, the name is blunt, chilling, and leaves no room for misinterpretation. Husband die. The architecture of the website draws heavy, explicit inspiration from the dark corners of Japanese pop culture, specifically the legendary anime Death Note, where writing a person's name in a supernatural notebook guarantees their demise, and Hell Girl, a horror series centering on a cursed website where bullied individuals can type the name of their tormentor to have them dragged directly to hell. Danashinai is not fiction. It is a very real, heavily trafficked form. It is a digital wailing mall where anonymous housewives gather under the cloak of night fervently, desperately wish for the physical death of their husbands. These are women who no longer view the vow till death do us part as a romantic promise of longevity. They view it as their only viable exit strategy. The psychology driving the site is deeply rooted in the concept of manifestation. The users genuinely believe that by articulating their hatred, by typing their murderous desires into the void and sharing it with a coven of like-minded women, they are pooling their dark energy. They believe they are willing the Reaper into existence. The website is proud of its morbid mission. The very first thing you see on the homepage is a constantly updating digital death counter, a monthly tally proudly displaying exactly how many husbands have been successfully sent to the big sayonara. Scrolling through the archives of Danashinai is like reading the twisted, collective diary of 1,000 trapped souls. You will find thousands upon thousands of highly detailed, deeply personal pleas to the god of death. Some of the grievances are rooted in severe, terrifying trauma, stories of physical abuse, emotional manipulation, and devastating infidelity. But others are chillingly mundane, where years of silent resentment have amplified petty annoyances into a justification for murder. A husband's loud snoring, his refusal to pick up his trash, his chewing sounds, all become capital offenses in the minds of these women. Let me read you a few translations ripped directly from the glowing screens of these desperate wives. Listen to the venom. One user writes, "The reason you're late home from work is because you're having an affair. All you can tell are lies. You're a bastard covered in debt. I get excited every time I hear the sound of an ambulance, but annoyingly you make it home every night. Shinigami, please, take him quickly. Die, you bastard. Delete yourself. Oh wait, you can't get insurance. Then die instantly in a single vehicle accident. Die without causing anyone any trouble." Another post, dripping with absolute contempt. "Haven't you been alive too long? How many more years are you going to make me wait? You rat, perish within a week at the latest. 38 years old and a salary of 200,000 yen. Even our kids in elementary school understand that their dad's no good. They'd be happier if you were dead. Our son says, I'd never kill anyone, but I wish someone would kill my dad. Surely it's not worth living that much. Lol, come on, get crushed by some heavy machinery at work today." And another, breathtaking in its cold calculation. "Your disappearance will make your family happy. Your survival will only bring you trouble. I hope my husband, who has Asperger's syndrome, dies right now. You have ruined my life. Give me back my time. The only thing you can do to make amends, as you have neither the financial means nor a heart, is to expire and let me receive my survivor's pension." And finally, a chilling entry rooted in deep psychological insecurity. "I married a poor, ugly guy who was inferior to me, but he got all cocky when I dressed him up in designer clothes, gave him stylish glasses, put him on a diet, and now that he's actually good enough to look at, he's gone out and gathered up some girls to hang out with her husband. Die." When you hear these testaments, it is tempting to rationalize them. You might think, this is just venting. It's an extreme form of therapy. These women are blowing off steam in a culture that demands absolute outward politeness. And for some that is certainly true. But, as you read further, the illusion of harmless venting shatters. The true motivation driving the core user base of Danashinai becomes terrifyingly clear. It is not about justice. It is not about escaping abuse. It is about a morbid, pragmatic fantasy, the absolute freedom provided by a massive life insurance payout. Listen to the cold, undeniable logic of this user. No matter how you look at it, death is the only option. First of all, divorce is out of the question for us. Think about how much we both earn. It's physically and financially impossible to separate. You can't come up with child support, a mortgage, living expenses. So although it may be fine for my mental stability, separation is out of the question. But if you were to die, well, and to make a lot of money that goes to me, my life would be more stable and I could protect our home and family. That is the only option. If you truly want to protect your family as you say, I think there's no other way than this. I don't think you'll be of any use in your mid-50 seconds, complaining about pains here and there. You'll only end up being a nuisance. Personally, I don't need you and there's no reason for you to live in the future. If things go as I want them to, everything will be fine. I'll take care of both of your parents, so you can die in peace. Die will. But a wish is just a wish until it becomes a reality. If you navigate deeper into the architecture of the website, past the main boards, you will discover a section titled The Effect Report. This is where the true darkness of Dana Shinai reveals itself. It is a forum dedicated to updates. It is filled to the brim with celebratory posts from women informing their fellow widow wannabes about their husbands, sudden health scares, near misses in traffic, and new disease diagnoses. They flood the board with effusive thanks to the Grim Reaper, praising the darkness for slowly eroding their spouses' lives. Amidst the endless pages celebrating gout flare-ups and terrifying spikes in blood pressure, a few posts stand out as absolute, bone-chilling testaments to human sociopath Y. One user simply wrote, "Thank you all for your support. I left my note at the end of the year. Thanks to you, I've become a widow. I received a lot of condolences. I'm sorry your husband was still so young, etc. I never say it out loud, but he got what he deserved, so I've come here to express my sincere gratitude." Another updated the community on her morbid success. "It's been a few months since I left my death note and I can't believe it. But my husband really died. The cause of death was heart failure caused by sleep apnea syndrome. He was cold in the morning. I called an ambulance and they confirmed his death at the hospital. To be honest, I'm so happy. So happy. So happy. Thank you so much, Grim Reaper." But the most disturbing entry on the entire platform, a post that paints a picture of absolute psychological horror, was written from the sterile confines of a hospital bathroom. Picture the scene. The bright, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of bleach and antiseptic, and sitting in a bathroom stall, a woman staring at her glowing phone screen, trying to stifle her own manic laughter while her husband lies bleeding in an intensive care unit just down the hall. She writes, "I was overwhelmed with joy when my husband, who I had just spoken ill of in this death note, was in a traffic accident the next day. I've been lurking on this site for a long time, but I refrained from posting because I thought mine was a mild case. A while ago, there was a show about Dana Shinai on TV and I watched it with my husband. Recently, Yahoo News featured an article about the administrator, Makito-san, and my husband said a lot of bad things about him. The next day, my husband went to work in his car and was hit by a truck and taken to a hospital. A terrible accident, they said. He broke his left leg, broke his pelvis, and ruptured some internal organs. He's in a critical condition and hasn't regained consciousness. I'm writing this from the hospital toilet. It's a strange feeling. I thought it would be painful, but I'm happy. What is this happiness? As time passes, my happiness and expectations are overflowing more and more. I hated my husband. He was just trying to act like a good person on the surface, but was filled with hatred himself. I thought by leaving my death note, my husband or caretaker, as he'd say, would somehow find out and become angry. I figured it's the same as saying something bad about the gods at a shrine. Of course I'd be punished, but I'm so happy. Let me say more and more. I'm so happy, so happy. So much fun. Just die. Stay like this, please. I can't show my smiling face in front of my parents-in-law, so I'll laugh a lot now. Here I'm smiling in this bathroom like I've never done before. I'm a weird person, sure. Other people will definitely think I'm weird if they see me. But I'm so happy. I can't stop smiling, laughing. Even I can't stop laughing as I write this. I can try it enough. Thank you. Grim Reaper. My husband is in a serious condition and won't last long, so I will let you all know when he dies. Just thank you so much. On any other corner of the internet, a post detailing the gleeful anticipation of a spouse's bloody demise would be met with overwhelming hostility, disgust, or calls to the authorities. But on the Nishinai, the echo chamber is absolute. The replies to that hospital bathroom confession were universally, terrifyingly supportive. One user chimed in, "I'm jealous. My husband was also involved in a traffic accident and I hope we receive a death notice tomorrow. What great fortune." Another user's reply descended into absolute madness, weaponizing her own children in her hatred. "I wish it were my husband instead of my pet who died today. Even though it's Christmas Eve. He yelled at me in front of our child and left the house, and when he came back, he forced me to obey him. When my husband's around, I want to kill my child and then myself just to hurt him." The replies continued, a chorus of domestic hatred. "Last year when I told mine I was going to the company's year-end party on the 29th, he complained a lot about how it was impossible at that time of year. But then today, on the 30th, he took the trouble to go out drinking with his friends, driving 90 minutes on his motorcycle. I prayed that he'd get crushed in an accident, but he called me to say that he had arrived safely. It's just unfortunate, really. I wonder if a truck will crash into my husband's car. I don't care if it's completely mangled or flattened, though I'd rather he did die in agony. That damn otaku gaming idiot. But if you thought the effect report was the bottom of the rabbit hole, you are wrong. The darkest, most actively malicious sector of the entire website is hidden behind the tab labeled Secret Revenge. This is not a place for wishful thinking. This is a tactical war room. Here, users who have lost their patience with the Grim Reaper share their horrifying covert methods for accelerating their husbands' deaths. It is a masterclass in slow, untraceable domestic murder. One user details her method of chemical warfare. "I'll continue to cook your meals every day that are a little higher in sugar and salt, so I hope you pass away as soon as possible. I'll be there for you until the end. When you can no longer speak, I'll hold your hand and whisper in your ear, 'I hated you so much. Whether you're taken by accident or illness, please make sure you listen to my voice in your final moments.'" Another shares her nutritional assassination strategy, targeting her husband's pre-existing medical conditions. "My husband has dyslipidemia. Even though he's taking medicine, he likes greasy foods and his numbers are not going down. This was my light bulb moment. Now I frequently pour oil on top of my husband's side dishes. The other day when I made him Tianjin rice, I poured some sesame oil on the rice, put an egg on top of it, poured oil on that, poured sauce on it, and no matter how you look at it, it was greasy and inedible. But he ate it saying, 'It's delicious, it's delicious.' He thinks he has a sophisticated palate, the idiot. It's a very modest attack and will probably take a long time, but he's had hepatitis and a fatty liver, so I hope he gets diabetes, liver cancer, or some other disease that insurance will cover. You bold mama's boy." And then, there are the methods designed purely for visceral, degrading punishment. I used to put dirty dishwater in your eye drops, but starting today, I'm changing it to dirty toilet water. Toilet water with toads in before they're flashed in. I'm gonna step up my revenge and send you to hell. So, who built this cathedral of hatred? If you assumed Anashin, I was coded by a deeply embittered, abused housewife seeking solidarity, you would be wrong. The architect of this entire digital ecosystem is a man. His name is Kohiro Makita. Makita does not hide in the shadows. He is not an anonymous specter. He boldly displays his full name and contact information directly on the site. He is fiercely proud of his creation, so much so that he has appeared on mainstream Japanese television programs to defend and discuss the platform. On the site's manifesto, Makita explains his dark philosophy. He claims that he was raised by deeply toxic parents, an upbringing that left his psyche permanently damaged. His worldview is bleak and absolute. If someone is causing you pain, if someone is making you feel trapped, there is absolutely nothing morally wrong with wishing for their total obliteration from the earth. But Makita did not just build a place to wish. He built a manual. At the very bottom of his philosophical explanation, Makita provides a hyperlink. It is a resource for any woman who is tired of waiting for a traffic accident. The link reads, "I wrote about how to kill your husband. Do not misuse. The police won't find out. How to kill your husband quietly and discreetly. How to damage your husband. Kill the people who piss you off. Happiness awaits once you have done so." If you click that link, you are taken to a highly detailed, step-by-step instructional article written by Makita himself. It explicitly outlines how to, in his own words, slowly and casually kill your husband. The guide details the use of specific, easily obtainable, entirely legal chemicals designed to slowly destroy human organs without ever triggering red flags during a standard post-mortem medical examiner's autopsy. It is a literal blueprint for getting away with murder. In recent years, facing media scrutiny, Makita has publicly backpedaled. He claims he regrets publishing the assassination manual and half-heartedly urges his users not to actually follow through with his lethal instructions. Yet, the article remains live. It is still hosted on his servers. The blueprint is still accessible to anyone with an internet connection and a rotting marriage. To this day, Kohiro Makita has faced absolutely zero legal repercussions from the Japanese authorities for facilitating a community of prospective murderers, nor for distributing a tactical guide on how to covertly poison a human being. The site thrives. As of today, there have been over 223,000 individual death notes published on the server. That is 223,000 distinct, detailed wishes for a husband to die in agony. The platform is humming with activity, receiving dozens, sometimes hundreds, of new submissions every single day. It is comforting to close your laptop, shake your head, and write off the vast majority of these posts as harmless dark fantasy. It is easy to label it as a twisted coping mechanism for a stressed society. But when you look at that digital counter on the homepage, tallying the dead month after month, you are forced to ask yourself a terrifying question. Out of those 223,000 women, how many of them stopped wishing and started planning? Thank you for joining me. Be careful out there. Mind who you trust, and I'll see you in the next one.